Okay, we are live. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to CMGR Hangout, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. If you like what you're seeing here today, hop over to mycmgr.com and let us know how you'd like to participate in the future. You can let us know what topic ideas you have if you'd like to be on air. We try to keep the upcoming topics on the sidebar as well so you can know what you want to join in on. Today we're talking about mapping community journeys, which I'm pretty excited about. I'll be the first to admit I haven't done a lot about this, but as I was researching for today, definitely got some ideas for how this could help improve community experience. So shout out to Frank, who's on our panel, who actually suggested this topic quite some time ago, that we're finally getting to now. And I will go ahead and let everyone introduce themselves. Sarah, if you want to kick it off.
Unmute myself. I am Sarah. I'm currently doing community and experience at Quilt, so this is the first time I get to really put those user experience maps to real work outside of my own department. I was previously at Dunwello and before that at GrabCAD, a mechanical engineering community, so I've been working in community for about, I don't know, 8 years now. Super loving it and excited to talk about customer experience maps because I feel like it doesn't really get explored in community, but I've used it everywhere I've gone.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Alex Bowen. I am head of developer relations and community for Dream Factory Software. I've been a community manager for a few years and I'm mostly really focused in technical communities with developers. It's been really, really rewarding for me. I have a lot of experience online and offline community development and I've started and created social media and community strategies. So I'm really excited to talk about what I've learned.
Cool. Well, my name is Frank Field. I'm the community manager at Nintex. Been here, well, in 3 weeks it'll be 1 year that I've been a community manager. And I forgot that I asked the question that led to this hangout, let alone having me on it, Sherry. So thank you very much. And super cool to be here with Sarah, who's got 8 years of experience and has used this before, because I get to learn, and that's my big thing. Is I love to learn. Used to do a lot of different jobs, stumbled into this by accident. Discovered that I really dig it. It has so much power. The potential was. It quickly dawned on me what the potential was for this, and now my community is at a stage where I need to kind of look at our map going forward. So I'll probably listen more than I talk today, but if I can offer any insights to other people or share my experience, totally thrilled to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. And for those who don't know, I'm Sherry Brody. I'm the community manager at Magento, which is an open source e-commerce platform, so also working with the technical world, much like Alex. And also co-produce CMGR Hangout here, usually with Brew, but unfortunately he couldn't join us today. I also realized I forgot to really introduce the topic more so of community journey mapping, but if anyone wants to start us out, maybe Sarah, I know you have a lot of experience with this, and just kind of explain community journey maps for people who maybe are not as familiar.
It's going to get me every time. So they've been used more in product and user experience in the past. They're really a combination of part personas, part thinking about the flow of whether that's an online site, offline experience, combination of the two. How are people kind of touching your community? And then really thinking about what does that experience look like and feel like for the member at every single touch point. So there are also things called like empathy maps that you could then look at, like the empathy map for every single touch point of what is this person seeing, what is this person thinking, what are they feeling, and kind of like what are they doing. So it's super useful because, as you can imagine, that's so much information. It's a really great tool. It really paints a story. What's really important is to kind of start with who is this really for, and I don't even mean like in your team. I mean like literally who's the member that you're doing this for. You can't really map it for your whole community in general. You have to have a very specific kind of persona in mind. So it's a great resource for companies who haven't even kind of gotten to that step yet with their community. It's a great kind of kickoff point for that as well. And you end up at the end with what are your gaps in the experience, what are the pain points, and then what opportunities do you have to make it better?
Awesome, thank you. And if you're like me and you need a visual, if you hop over to Google and just do an image search on community or sorry, customer journey maps, either one will bring it up. There's actually lots and lots of visual examples out there, which is really great if you just need something to get your ideas flowing. So question one, starting out, what are the benefits of creating a customer journey map?
Yeah, so hey everyone, happy Friday again. This is Alex. I'll just jump in here. At least for me personally, in my experience, it's been really about building a shared understanding, key insights, and which enable an actionable results in your community. I've worked with product development team, management, other community members, and what I've learned, which is really cool, is that the process sometimes is as important as the outcome. You learn so many things and discover so many things as you're going through this process that sometimes that can just be enough value in and of itself. So just to jump in on what I think some of the benefits are is it really helps when you kind of take a step back at any point, really. I try to do this once a year, at least once a quarter, but when you step back and get like a holistic picture and perspective of what you're doing, how you're interacting with customers, how they're interacting with you, it's only really going to help inform your strategy. It really also helps you refocus and realign with the customer. Pay attention to the customer, pay attention to their behaviors, and that really feeds the product design and roadmap. It's a great way to get deeper and better understanding of your customer, of your community, which we know is super important. You have to understand the value for them, as well as the value for you on your side. And then again, it helps kind of narrow your focus. And so then when you're doing these efforts, it really creates a high impact. So when you're doing these changes, and it's really going to help bring your community to the next level and do a sustainable impact. Again, it helps you really develop clear roadmaps and community journeys, which helps save you time. And at least for me, you know, it helps me empathize with our users and our community and just get a better understanding of who they are, and helps me understand how to better implement my community strategy. So that's just a little bit of how I've experienced it and gone through that journey personally.
I guess I can jump in. So yes to everything that Alex said, absolutely. One of the things I really like about it, you mentioned briefly at the beginning, which is how to communicate to management. A lot of times what we talk about from a community perspective is like it's really tough getting buy-in, or it's really tough to get other people to kind of like know what you're doing and why do you have this strategy, and it's hard for them to empathize the same way that you do because you're talking to people every day and you kind of just like naturally get it. But it's really a way to tell a story for how people are feeling and what they're really trying to achieve by using your community, and how they're kind of struggling to get there because of certain things in the experience. So it's a great way to kind of have something to deliver to another team. It's very digestible, like all the information is there so they can kind of think about it at different points of the day. Even when you're not there, they can go back to the customer experience map or community experience map and see, okay, you know, this is what people are struggling with right now. Maybe they use that to make a decision. Or maybe you're showing your management team, if we want people to get all the way to the end and improve this goal, like this is where I need support, this is where I need resources. It's super, super helpful.
Well, I'll try to, since I'm the new guy, I should inform people I have an external community that has a lot of varied goals, and I inherited the community. I didn't have any insights to the reasons behind the way it was mapped out. Although I will say that the lady who put it together before me and my boss, they're great, and they taught me as much as they could in the time that they had with me onboarding. But I didn't even understand the company's product and what it did when I first got hired. So either my boss is a benevolent genius, and he kind of is, but I think he hired me in part because as a former journalist, I just ask a lot of questions, and my questions help me learn about not just what the community is capable of, as I said earlier, but I've tended to follow what I've learned through my research, whether it's, and I hope it's okay to mention other entities, but like from reading Richard Millington or Fever Bee or my CMGR, of course, or Community Roundtable, to going to a conference put on by the platform provider that my community is on. My question is always, what do you want to do? And then what does our platform do to support that? Otherwise, you get into a situation where I felt like I was recently, where I'm just trying to be the nice guy and help everybody else in my company get whatever they want out of the community, and you wind up with 100 different projects that don't really fit together and don't point to anything that's a return benefit to your company. So the benefit of creating a journey map is knowing, I'm kind of a Franklin Planner guy. It's called a piece of paper, and you put a bunch of them together, and it has dates on it and stuff. And people used to carry these around for smartphones. So I'm a Franklin Planner kind of guy. I like having the goal in mind and planning backwards. And I think having a journey map will help me do that and help me get there, so I can actually eventually, prove some more ROI for my company, and then everybody wins: members, company, and then me as the manager.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think you guys really definitely nailed it there. Being able to show what you're working towards and how you're actually getting there is definitely a huge, huge part of being successful with community. So I think we kind of briefly touched on it, but question 2, where do you start when creating a customer journey map? Like, what's your first starting point, and what do you kind of keep in mind very early on? This could be thought process, this could be tools, this could be getting out whatever that paper thing is Frank was talking about.
Well, I'll just jump in because my list is going to be shorter maybe than everybody else's, but again, my approach has always sort of been, well, I start with the questions I have to ask. What's everybody else doing? So what's our business goal? Obviously, you start with that, and then I research other communities. I use the platform we're on happens to be Jive, so I go to the Jive community and I see what other people are doing. I've been really fortunate that there's I'm going to go ahead and name him, Tableau's Pat Vandehide. He's the director of community there. He actually sat down to coffee with me. Who does that anymore? And gave me advice. And so I gather all those little bits of research and use that as I look to, okay, here's where we want to go. What are other people doing? And then how am I going to get there? So that's where I start.
Now that I have a template that I've been using for a while, I kind of start from a different place, which is who is that persona that I'm really trying to walk through this journey with? Who are those people? If I don't have the persona, kind of like doing the work to kind of create that, which is a whole different thing. But if I do, then going out, finding those people time, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. So those questions usually just end up being like, walk me through kind of how you'd solve this without the community, and then I basically get into how we would interact with their normal process. And then if it's somebody who is already a part of the community, having them walk me through like what they normally do on any kind of given day, you end up getting a lot by letting people kind of free form take you through the process. And then I basically want to kind of bookend it, so I go to, what's our goal at the end, and then just try to kind of weave in between and make them meet together. That's usually where I start.
Awesome. I'm already learning stuff already. So my process is a little bit similar. Right away reviewing your goals. You have to consider your organizational goals around your brand, and also specific goals that you have for this customer mapping initiative that you're starting. I always like to make sure I have a good mix of people at the table. Hopefully many different areas and departments of the company kind of break down the silos, because I think everyone comes with really interesting perspective, and making sure that you get varying levels of leadership there. Obviously you want some C-suite in there ideally, but Also getting, the people that are on the ground, getting their hands dirty, the customer support people. Those people always have really great insights that when I've worked with them. I'm always really all about the research. So for me, I just gather literally as much research as I can. And you want to do both qualitative and quantitative. That's pretty important when you're trying to prove insights into the user experience. I do customer interviews, customer surveys. I use web analytics, social media listening tools. I also do competitive intelligence as well. So with qualitative, I always ask, some of the basic questions I start asking is, I use this framework of like doing, thinking, feeling. Can I use this? How do I use this? Will this work? How does it feel? And this really helps you understand the importance and the value of these particular touch points for your customers, and that will give you insight into the human behavior, the emotions, and the personality. And the other side, the quantitative side of that, again, analytics, traffic reports, surveys, channel switching. That really gets into the user behaviors, the needs, the routines, that sort of thing, and that can really feed into the persona development as well. And then you kind of like sketch the journey from that. So you put everything together with your team, you brainstorm on the customer journey, make sure that you include timeline, touch points, all the channels, emotional troughs and highs, and then any other ideas. And I always make sure that I really share this out. Personally, I always like to just post it in the comment rooms. I think it's like really inspiring, and it unites everyone in the company really. So I always display it in common areas, and like I mentioned earlier, I try to do this at least just for me as the community manager once a quarter. But with everyone, depending on timing, you could do it at least once a year. And I really use this as the backbone strategy when I'm developing my community management strategy and figuring out KPIs with my boss.
Sorry, was distracted on Twitter. All right, so we kind of covered this a little bit now because we keep jumping ahead, which is awesome. But what research should you gather before really jumping into the map? Do you guys have anything else to add there, or you pretty much covered it?
Probably pretty much covered it, but I just think for me, being newer, I want to know what the business leaders who know what the goals are, I want to know what they think. I want to understand who the audience is, understand what my platform provides to reach those goals, and then make sure the leaders understand what the platform provides and accept its limitations. That's something I've kind of learned as I've gone along, that sometimes people think that a community can do one thing, and maybe they didn't buy the integration for that when they first set it up, and then you have to deliver some bad news. So I've tried to really learn what's the scope of this thing that we actually bought before I was brought aboard, so that I can kind of manage expectations as I go. But that's just sort of high-level thinking about what you should gather before you start.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add that it sounds like a very overwhelming experience for somebody who's maybe listening to this and like thinking about doing their first map. So I would just kind of encourage you, like Alex was saying, look at what other people are doing, like use what somebody else has kind of put together, like steal from other people's customer experience maps. Try to find, even if it's like market data that you can find about how many people are really maybe coming at something from a different way. Anything that you can kind of fudge just to get like a draft of it out there to your team, because it's like a big hurdle to get past. It feels like a big piece of work. You don't want it to be incomplete when you put it out to everybody, but it's better to show people that it is like a work in progress. It is something that evolves. So get out there, say this is what we think it is, and this is how we're going to test it. Almost more like a hypothesis, so you can kind of like prove it over time or disprove it, change it up. It makes it feel kind of like less intense.
Well, Sarah, I would only pile on to what you say. I'm really lucky. I work at a company that allows people to fail, which isn't common in the tech industry, I don't think. And it's great because you can try stuff and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. And you can try something else. That's also the beauty of community, is that it's this ephemeral thing that constantly changes, and that's okay too. You can use that to your advantage and say, well, we did this, and here's what the results were. Now I want to try something else. Hey, boss, let's go that way, maybe. But not everybody works in a place like that, but I'm lucky that I do. So find out if you do. You other newbies out there in Google Hangout land, use that to your advantage.
Awesome, thanks guys. Question 4, how do you identify touch points and channels for each stage and goal? So as you're working through it, how do you think through these are the areas that people are going to be looking for or might fall through the cracks in, etc.?
All right. Well, I think, first probably defining what that kind of means for people out there who might be kind of new to this topic. So, I think the customer journey is really all about touch points. So this process really helps you take a holistic perspective and consider basically all the actions that someone would take perhaps before, during, and after maybe a purchase, for example. So for me, touch points is, the points where a customer does an action or an interaction with your brand. You can think about this as the what the customer is doing. And then the channels on the other side is, where does this interaction take place? What's the context around it? Is it an app? Is it your website? Is it in the store? That's the where are they interacting. So when we're talking about touch points and channels, again, touch points are the what customer is doing, and the channels are where they're interacting. And customers' perceptions will be influenced by these various touch points. So some touch points that I've identified, employee comments and behavior, perhaps the sales process, the customer service process, the social media, perhaps you have an online community forum or an online community or an offline community, events, marketing strategies. So when you increase these customer touch points, you entice them to engage with your brand in multiple ways and stay engaged. And touch points in the customer journey increases, as you can probably understand, in complexity as the business grows. And ideally, you want your brand to transcend just one single action or single touch point, and actually form your customer to form a connection with the brand. Something I like to think about, community is the heart of your business, and then your customer is the heart of your community. So the customer really is the heart of your business. So as a community manager, I place the customer at the center and support them throughout their processes, throughout their touch points, and in the various channels. And it's so much greater than just a one-time marketing funnel journey that it's more of a traditional model. Customers are developing ongoing relationships with brands, and through this, you're really building relationships through your community and through these community-based efforts at these touch points. And community really influences channels. There's many emerging channels. Social media is one of them. And when someone's reviewing your product or thinking about perhaps going to your product instead of someone else, they're going to be looking at these various touch points and channels for reviews and interactions, in fact, to get a sense of your community. Personally, it's not my greatest moment, but we once had feedback that someone was super apprehensive to buy our software just because when they went into the community, the community was really small and not a lot of people weren't engaging. So, this is where advocacy as the community manager really comes in, because you help facilitate and foster these communities to integrate, not only customer preferences, but you increase loyalty as well. So, wow, okay, that was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But I'll pass it on to someone else.
No, it was good stuff. I don't have anything to add here. This is the segment, these next 3 questions, where I learned from you guys. So that was great.
Yeah, I'll say everything that Alex said plus one. I think what's kind of cool, maybe just to think about this in a different way, is that with all the new tools that you can really be using in your different community platforms or even in marketing automation. So when I'm doing this now, what's really cool is there's this new element to the site that I've never had to map before. We have chat on the website, but like through like part automated messages, like you can send like automated messages, you can be talking to them based on what they're doing and actions in the site. So it's a nice kind of proactive touch point. So I would also encourage like for people to think about, don't just rely on like what your touch points are right now, like think about where you could be interacting with customers in the future or where they should really have a touch point but don't have one. So like offline communications or even when they're talking to like their friends outside of what you're doing. So many referrals happen word of mouth. So thinking about how you can really be helpful for them in all different types of circumstances and think about, you know, what creative ways can really get out there and engage with people is kind of fun.
That's awesome. Thanks, guys. I pulled up this visual just from one of the blogs I stumbled across just to kind of help you figure out. So this is where it's lining up the stages with the goals for each stage and then touch points that they might come across for each of those stages. So just in case you're totally lost is what we're talking about. This is one of many, many examples out there where those touch points apply to each of the stages and then yeah, into the channels as well.
That's a really good image. I've never seen that before.
I tweeted it out
Okay.
actually in a reply to someone. There were like 4 that I replied with. I started saving them to my computer yesterday when I was looking up some of this, and then I realized that I wasn't properly citing them to do that, but I can share out more of the articles I found too. I did tweet out on the My CMDR handle an article from UX Mastery that I think covers community journey mapping very, very well, and they had a lot of really good visuals on there as well. So if you scroll up in the hashtag a bit, it's there. So that's awesome. Thanks, guys. So moving forward, question 5, what roles do maps and different lenses play when mapping the journey? I know, Sarah, you touched on this earlier, but really experiencing those emotions and whatnot that the community members experience as they step through the different stages.
Yeah, so I think outside of just kind of using an empathy map to really get yourself in the perspective of whatever persona you're walking through the journey, I usually try to, whether you have like a staging environment or something that you can do or something that you can, I don't know, like it's kind of stupid or like dorky, but I love it, but like role play with somebody else on your team where you can like actually pretend that you're that persona and really try to kind of like embody what they would be doing, what they would be thinking, how they would be interacting. It's definitely like an uncomfortable experience, but if you want to kind of go all in, and do it to like 11, like that's really kind of my way to get into it and do that. There's no way to kind of not be empathetic when you're doing that, especially because somebody from your team who probably feels similar to the way you do when they're interacting with community members, to kind of like put that on you. You kind of see what it feels like to get those kind of communications from someone. It really puts it into perspective, which is kind of fun.
Totally. That was really well said. I feel like empathy is definitely a buzzword, but it is, I mean, it's a buzzword for a reason, right? I mean, again, it helps you zoom out from just like focusing on behaviors to actually considering how people are feeling and what they're thinking. And that leads into persona development, like Sarah mentioned. So when I do persona development, I kind of like to push the limits a little bit and exaggerate it sometimes because that helps you discover pain points and challenges sometimes easier without going too crazy. So I kind of have like steps that I have outlined that help me kind of develop personas. So again, shocker, collect data. I love data. This can help you discover pain points and challenges. So literally as much data have around past data and also data that you're getting in from surveys and things like that from different sources. And then create your a handful of different ones, at least 3 to 5 that address pain points and challenges throughout the customer journey. Then you would literally write out, what is this persona thinking, what are they feeling, and what are they doing? And empathy mapping really helps you reveal that underlying why are they taking the actions and the choices that they are, because sometimes it's really hard for a user to actually articulate or perceive what their challenges are. So definitely keep that in mind. Let's see, what else can I mention? Yeah, I think generally personas, it's trying to figure out a way to build an empathy for your customers, really discover their needs, their goals, their pain points, and bridge the gap between the persona over here and then perhaps, your design concepts. That's my experience.
Well, I'm really lucky. Even though I'm new to this, I'm working at a company that's fairly young, and the community is 2 years old, and we really only have 3 personas. It's the external customer, the partners who sell our product, and the people who are internal to the company who may, for whatever reason, use the community. So I just try to think about what their needs are, and I have to confess I haven't done an empathy map, but now I feel like I need to go buy a mask and some blindfolds and like feathers and stuff and do role playing. I don't know where that comes from, but anyway, I'm gonna be a little more. Thank you for laughing, Alexandra. My God, thank you very much. Now I'm going to do a little more of that and actually write it down because then I won't forget as I go through. I find that because we're so young, it's really, there are separate ways that partners may touch the company and they may not be the community first. So I'm going to take Sarah and Alexandra's advice and actually write it down and see how those people go through it, because I honestly don't know what the pain points are, other than I have a pain point in trying to increase engagement, and that there's a problem right there. There's a knot I have to untangle.
I think that actually brings up a really interesting point. So I was going to say, from having been at a company where we have like 1 persona, we don't even have 3, or like where we have like 5 product personas, 5 marketing personas, like you just have a bagillion. You can really see and kind of use the customer experience map as a way to see, like, are people kind of behaving in an unexpected way? It's almost a way to kind of like see a new persona as they're emerging, like a new type of person is using your product. You can kind of map that versus like the data that Alexandra loves getting. If you see that they're using the site in a new way, you're like, okay, are they motivated by the same thing? Like, let's go talk to these people. So it's a great tool to kind of evolve with your community as it matures as well.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sorry, guys, I was lost in another window there. It's really hard to keep track of all your browser windows, really. So I think you guys kind of mentioned this. I'm going a little off track here, but we've talked a little bit about looking back at maps. How often do you really revisit your maps and make sure that you're adjusting where needed or implementing maybe a new feature, a new area, or a new persona? How often do you really evaluate that? Because it's obviously not really, it's not really like a one-time done type of exercise.
Yeah, I think what Sarah alluded to earlier is that, right, it is not a one and done thing. It's something that you're always kind of working on. I try to do it every quarter. That sometimes gets hard, so sometimes you can only meet with, a huge group of people and everyone that you quite really need once a year, but for me, I try to do it once a quarter at least. And of course, with every big product release, I would say if there's a big change in the company internally, or if we've released a new product or something big has happened, I try to do it again there too.
I can say I think it depends on what your kind of product process is, or what maturity your community level, or what maturity level your community is at. I can say right now I'm pretty much relooking at it like every month, because we just don't have enough data to really feel confident in it. So I'd say once you feel confident, it feels like as long as you're checking in before you're kind of resetting your goals for the quarter, or like resetting your strategy, whether it happens quarterly, biannually, like whatever it is, you just want to check in to make sure that everything is good, you feel confident about, you know kind of what the process is and where the pain points are. You don't want to go out and do work that doesn't matter because you forgot to update your customer experience map, and there isn't a pain point there anymore, and you just forgot to update it. So it's kind of up to you based on how you're using it and how often you're using it to make sure you're one step ahead of that.
Well, having not gone through the process, I can still chime in on one thing, and you mentioned it, Sarah, and that's reporting. So one of the really smart things that my predecessor and my boss did when they set it up was they said, we're going to do a monthly report to track not just contributions and activity and numbers, but we're going to track a bunch of different metrics, and we're going to track them over time. And now that the community is 2 years old, I have year-to-year data. So I can look at, well, is this trend mapping with what happened the first year of the community? And if it's different, why is that? And then I have a place to go look for answers and find those, I hate to use the buzzword, but pain points. Find those things that aren't moving the way we want them to, and then make adjustments as we go. We're actually at a point where we're going to completely re-skin our community and kind of look at its navigation. And so now I have about 16 to, no, I have more like 20 monthly reports to look at, and I can say what's happening and where do we want it to go and how does that affect how we want to lay out the community now. So I benefit from Sarah and Alexandra's comments today because I can take that into account as we look at, well, what do we want it to look like starting October or January? So do your monthly reports. They're not that hard.
Preach.
Yeah, well, and I hate spreadsheets. I'm sorry, I hate Excel. I know you data geeks out there are going to go, oh, but I hate that stuff. I'm a word guy. I tell stories, right? But I do the report and I gain insight and I use it to make changes in what I'm doing. Or go to my boss and say, hey, I'm noticing this. Could we do the following things? And then you get change, you get to do something.
Yeah, I mean, data is so important for what we do, but let's be honest, most of us who are in these roles are in them because we like people, we like stories, we like building relationships, not because we like looking at spreadsheets, even though that becomes quite a large part of what we do, for sure.
Yeah, my love is definitely like come from hate, right? Like the necessity and being forced to do it all the time. You're just kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, just recently someone was like, well, you really like looking at data and like quantifying the unquantifiable. I was like, well, not really. I just understand how important it is. And it is kind of fun to like watch data tell the story that you know is there, but to have that data kind of back up the story it's good. And there are other people in your company, other stakeholders involved who are numbers people and are spreadsheet people and need those reports and that data. And that's cool. It helps you speak their language, which makes sure you keep getting paid.
Well, can I add a little anecdote? So yeah, exactly, because I probably shouldn't even say this, and I'm not going to name names, but I was sitting in a meeting, and one of the top people, as we were evaluating some other product, I don't even know why I was in the meeting. Sometimes I think I'm there because I ask questions until somebody says, because we've always done it that way, and then you get somewhere. But I was sitting in a meeting, some of the top people, and I was asking this poor sales guy a couple of questions about this product they were looking at, and it came to ROI. And I said, kind of offhand, I said, well, it's really difficult to prove in community, so how do you prove it with your product? And one of the top people laughed out loud, like, yeah, show me why. And so I took that as a challenge, right? Now darn it, I'm going to go make that formula, because we haven't done that, and I think this maybe mapping in this way, journey mapping doesn't get directly at ROI, but it affects it, and it'll now be part of this formula that I'm going to develop as I go forward with my boss and try and prove it, because I took it as a challenge. So the data, yeah, I hate, oh God, Excel, are you kidding me? Oh, I'm going to, okay, there, I just said a bunch of bad stuff and you couldn't read my lips. Have to do it. Do your monthly reports, people.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point. And I think, I mean, we talked about this in the beginning, but you can't really custom a journey map if you don't know where you're trying to go. Like, it's like just if you were going on a road trip, like, unless you're going on a road trip with absolutely no point at all, except for to drive, like, you have to know your destination to know even if you're going the scenic route or the efficient route. Like, you just have to figure out where you're going in order to map out how to get there. And I think that's a very important point. And also, if you do have your goals set and you do have your community map in place, then you can show, like, this is how I'm walking the community through to our actual goal that we're trying to accomplish with the community, which is really important. And if you don't know how to quantify your community, a really good place to start is CMX's space model, which I tweeted out a little bit earlier, but that does help you identify potential goals for your community based on the type of company or community that you're working for or with. And that'll kind of help you identify ways to communicate the value of your work and the value of your community and what you're doing so that you know where to step through to.
Is it okay if I ask a question following up on the space model?
Please do.
So, because I would really love to hear from Sarah and Alexandra. I was looking at that 54-page deck on how they do it, and maybe I misunderstood it, but they talk about the space model for community value, and it almost looks like the community is either support or product or acquisition or content or engagement, and my community is a number of those all rolled into one, and I'm wondering how Sarah and Alexandra handle that, because I'm betting that their communities are more than single purpose too.
I'm happy to jump in on this because I've lived that question. So I think what's interesting is while it's fun to see that community can pull all of those levers and can boost any one of those areas, there are communities out there that only do one or a few, which is perfectly valid and wonderful for a company. I think it's also important to show that you can't necessarily overextend yourself and try to change all of those things all at once, or to create an effective community around all of those things all at once. So what has been helpful for me is to really pick what's the first point in that kind of like space model of where I really want to prove the worth and viability of community in this company. So I've had the opportunity to kind of come at it from a bunch of different ways, from, you know, support and tying it in there, from like making the product better. But what I've always found is the kind of most impactful lever to pull is the one that's tied to revenue, which usually comes through engagement for me, showing the lifetime value of a community member being higher than other people really speaks to a lot of people at the company. There's no kind of like ifs, ands, or buts around it. So that's what I'm kind of been focusing on lately now, but in no way do I think that I won't kind of expand community to kind of fulfill all of those over time, because you can, and it's a great source, but I would say not try to do all of them at once, even if you can do all of them at once.
You're saying prioritize, pick one, and then tackle the others after that?
Yeah, that's a very similar experience to what I've done too.
Yeah, I can echo that as well. Even if your community is addressing various things, you need to pick an area to focus on. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in more data than you need to really show the value. You could get stuck looking at numbers all day long, but you need to have like one central point to focus on, maybe two at the most, so that you know how to clearly communicate the value. That doesn't mean that those are the only ways that you're getting value out of the community. That means that they're the top priority.
You can also you can lose your community's effectiveness in the noise of branching them out to a bunch of different ways to help, because the community is helping a little bit in a lot of different ways. It's harder for the company to see the value. Whereas if you're kind of like funneling them all into one really helpful way, it's a much more visible change and impact.
Awesome, guys. So how do you identify a successful community journey map? How do you look at it and know, hey, yeah, this is definitely accurate. This is doing what I need it to do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. say you're really doing this to help understand your customers. So when you can understand your customers and what actions they're taking and why, I mean, I think that's pretty successful. And when you have a high lifetime customer value, I think that, you know, is because you have an effective community journey map, means the relationship with your customer and your brand is really strong and they become an advocate. And for me personally, I just love user stories as well. And so when you have strong customer references and success stories shared from their point of view, you know, that shows that there's value in your brand and community. So those are kind of ways that I feel like, okay, yeah, we are successful at what we're doing. We must be understanding the customer. You know, I mean, understanding what customers are doing at each stage and what's bringing them to the next stage is only going to help you refine those touch points better, understand their motivations, you know, keeping them caring, and it means that you've asked the right questions. So, and hopefully you've eliminated barriers. I mean, there's always going to be barriers, but you know, if it's successful, then you've eliminated a lot of those barriers as well.
My coworker is currently making funny faces at me, so a little distracted. I totally agree with Alex. I think if your customer or community experience map paints a pretty picture, and not pretty as in like attractive, but pretty as in like that's a useful piece of information. If it's painting a story, if it's telling a story, if it's something that other departments can act on, if it's something that gives you something to go out and change, some sort of leverage you can pull, a way to make the experience better, I think that's really a successful map. If you can't, if it's a like complete and full of data, but you can't really use it, there's really no point. So I would say definitely having that goal set in your head of I'm putting this together so I can achieve this goal, and then being able to know when you're done, which is also kind of a hard point. To say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go fix these things. They're the priority. That's a good map.
Yeah, I would say that really reminded me, being able to find priorities. I mean, that in itself, just like what you mentioned, Sarah, just being able to understand what your priorities are, I mean, that can help so much with just strategy and development in and of itself. So definitely that resonated with me.
Awesome. We have a question from Marjorie over on Twitter, and she wants to know, going back to when we were talking about how community maps never being like a one and done thing, has there ever been a situation where you found yourself having to overhaul a journey map versus just making regular adjustments?
I can. It being at startups recently, if there's ever some sort of pivot in what your business is doing or what your community, what value the community is giving to the business, if that changes at all, you might end up talking to a different person, so that map might then become not a useful thing at all, other than kind of telling them how the business is changing. You could be adding a new feature, which completely changes the flow. There's so many things can happen, which kind of just completely just shuffle everything around. And even if it is similar, it just kind of invalidates all of the data. Like if you learned that maybe you were tracking something incorrectly and you thought people were going through the flow and away, but then you realized you were just completely measuring it wrong, which happens. People are human. Then you have to kind of start over again too. So while slow, like iterative changes are ideal, it's definitely not like a horrible thing to have to start over again, because like Alex was saying, you know, you creating it is a journey in and of itself where you're going to learn and get something out of it.
Yeah, ditto.
Awesome. What advice do you guys have for someone creating a community journey map for the first time that we maybe haven't covered as we've walked through?
Well, I'm going to go watch this podcast or this hangout again.
Yeah, I guess just remembering kind of why you're doing it, making sure everyone's at the table, you know, it is about finding the value for your members and for your company, and you have to balance those. And when you map your customer journey, it helps you define, the value and eliminate obstacles that are deterring from that value. Again, I think communities are very customer focused, and that includes just naturally the customer experience and the customer journey. So you can't really have a good community or roadmap without understanding those pieces. So, understanding what the customer's needs are and what they're going through builds your relationship with the customer as well. And that customer experience is as important as the quality of the actual physical product that you're selling as well.
I would totally agree. I would encourage people to just to jump in and try it and do it. There's really no way to lose from trying to do this, even if it doesn't end up being what you thought it would. To really think about each kind of part of the experience map as a way for you to learn something new about the people that you're helping, and to kind of learn a little bit more about your product, and to kind of bring it all together, and to not forget to share what you've done with other people. It's so useful for you. You kind of want to just keep it to yourself sometimes and feel like, oh, it's so pretty. But it's really not for you. It's for other people to get involved in the process, because once you've mapped it out, you have the whole picture in your head. You don't really need it anymore until you do it again. But it's for getting other people involved. It's for explaining the process to the rest of your company. It's to get, your community members involved in what you're doing, and to give you feedback, so not kind of forgetting that point.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. So just start. That's the biggest, the journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first one. And that's really true. I mean, it is kind of a beast of a project, but you got to just take that first step, and you're always learning, and there's Google. So, and hopefully, you're working with a team of other people who are interested in this as well, or can give you insight.
But don't forget your community platform too. I'm sure that the one I'm on is not the only one that has a community about community, and then there's this community, and other communities about community management that offer everything from, and I'm just going to pick out one because I happen to look at it, and that's the Community Roundtable. They literally offer a step-by-step guide to setting up your community, including worksheets to fill out. So if you can find that stuff, I know even though my community was already set up when I got hired, I downloaded all those sheets and started going, did they do this? Did they do this? Did they do this? And looking and seeing, oh, okay. And then asking questions as I went. Why did you do it that way, boss? Why did we do it this way? And where are we going with that? And learning from that process too. And then this is just one more. It's almost like as I did what Sherry suggested at the very top of the Hangout. I went and Googled, and you literally will get these little roadmaps on a graphic that Sherry showed one. Well, gosh, even I can do that, and I didn't know what community management was 13 months ago. And I'm finding that helpful. Just kind of living through the process, like you say, Alexandra, just start it.
Yep, don't get stuck in that analysis paralysis. The nice thing about this is, yes, there are so many visuals out there. I feel like a lot of times with different community things we take on, it's like, can you show me an example? And no one can, because they're like, no, this is proprietary, I'm not showing it to you. Especially when it comes to reporting and things of that nature. But journey maps are very, very easy to find because they are so common in the user experience world.
But I find I actually asked out loud if somebody could show me their ROI formula, and I got an email.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know. You're not going to know. I found this out as a reporter. You won't know if you don't ask, right? And lo and behold, somebody helped me out, and now I can take that. I just about jumped out of my skin when I told my boss. I was like, are you kidding me? This guy just gave me this amazing reference that I can help use. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's out there.
Very true. Very true. All right. Last chance. Does anyone else have anything else to add to this conversation? Any last tips or anything? Or are we good?
I'm just going to tweet out my template that I use and love, and maybe a slide share or two.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter if you have any questions. I'll definitely try to help. And that's something I love about the community manager community, is that everyone's so willing to help. And because of these chats, and it's just really great to hear. So I'd like to contribute to that too. So if you have any questions, do tag me or reach out.
Yeah, you get sucked into it. I've discovered that there's a bunch of people out there who want to help, and then you find yourself saying, oh yeah, I got the same help, go talk to so-and-so. Here's what I did. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love that about community professionals. There's so many are eager to and willing to kind of help you through what they did and walk you through it, give their own examples and experience for sure. Kind of on that note, our next hangout is September 2nd, and we are doing a community show and tell. So if you guys have examples of communities you like or your own and you want to join in and kind of show them off and share different elements that you're really proud of or that have worked well for you or that maybe you just really aspire to be from another community, definitely let me know. We have plenty of room. It was Crystal Bruce's suggestion, and she'll be here, and looking forward to seeing and hearing from others as well. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I hope you have a great Friday, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yay, thank you. Happy Friday.
Thank you, guys.